Okay, so I'm gonna create 6 boxes here to practice different textures. And I just have a 9 by 12 multimedia piece of sketch paper, and I'm folding it in half this way. And then I'm gonna rip it with a ruler, a straight edge ruler, and I'm flipping it over. And I like to do this with the ruler because it creates a nice edge, and it's honestly easier than cutting with scissors. So I just hold on tight here and rip. And sometimes I do that with all 4 edges of my paper. And I'm doing this because for the drawing, for the texture drawing, the longer drawing, it's going to be smaller just because there's a lot of detail. So you don't need to use the whole paper. And I'm always trying to conserve paper. So get that out of the way. And I'm just going to tape this down. So you're gonna do at least 6 boxes here to practice different textures. You can always do more, and think of this as a texture library. So you're building these different textures to use later on in future drawings, just to practice. This is a good thing to do to make different libraries of textures or lines or different things. I'll be using pen. Just so you can see it better, but you can do this exercise in pencil or whatever you want. Sometimes, if any of you are getting older like me, I just wrap this with duct tape when I'm using these pens a lot to help my hand rest and not get cramped. So if you see that, that's what that is. It's just a bunch of duct tape ripped up and wrapped around. Okay. So this does not have to be measured out, but if you're a person that likes measuring, you can go ahead and do that. I'm going to make 6 boxes. And they don't have to be perfect. And we're going to fill each of these with a different texture. And I'm talking, so I lost count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, one more. Okay, so the first one is going to be stippling, which I'll write out. And for something like this, like a texture library, it's good to write it out too. And that's just dots. So you can try all different kinds of pens with this. You can do it with a pencil, and with different pens, you might have to you can either just make a quick dot, or you can kind of draw a circle. And what I'm going to show you is how to do shading with this. So I'm going to make the outside a lot darker, and the inside, I'll make like kind of a circle, getting lighter on the inside. So there's going to be shading throughout this whole box of stippling, but I'm going to show you how we can shade the corners darker and leave the center lighter so that you can create values in these different textures. So quickly do this. And then I'm going to draw circles as well. And if you have different size pens, that's great. You can also just use one size and draw the circles to make some bigger. So this is all stippling is, and this could be used for a lot of different textures. It could be used for like a background texture. It could be used for concrete. It could be used for clothing. It could really be used for anything. I mean, if you learned art history or learned about pointillism, they painted all in dots, those artists, and created some really cool techniques. So you can really make any texture this way that you want. The reason we're doing these textures with marks is so that you learn to create texture with actual lines and marks rather than smudging or just mushing everything together, having really intentional mark making to create different textures. And then I'm going to start to come to the corners, and I want you to try to make some areas darker and some lighter. So you're creating shading with these marks. And you can make some bigger, and you can just keep on going over and over certain areas to create more shading. And I'm leaving the center lighter, and I'm filling up the edges, kind of like a vignette. Okay, so that's stippling. The next thing is called ticks, or short lines. So I've seen these used for, you know, different kind of fur of animals, or clothing. Same thing as the stippling, you can use these ticks for anything to fill in a texture, and you can make them closer or further apart depending on the shading. So the closer they are, I'm going to add some more in between what I just did to make a darker area for shading. And you can obviously spend as much time making yours perfect. You can also go in different directions. So I'm going to start kind of making mine go in a circle here. And what I do sometimes if I'm trying to change the directions, I'll do 1 or 2 lines in the direction I want it to go, and then it's kind of easier to fill in, you know, this way it's all going that angle, this way it's all going that angle. And then if you want to make it darker, you can just start filling in spaces. And so I want you to fill these whole boxes with this texture to start creating your texture library. It's kind of fun, and just practice doing different directions, different distances, and see what you like. This is all practice. Doing these sketches that we do is so you can practice these different techniques before you're on a final drawing, before you're, you know, committing to something. Okay, the next one is scribbles and waves. This one's kind of fun, and what I end up doing a lot with my drawings. Scribbles, sorry about my handwriting, or waves. And for this one, I want you to think about different pressure. No matter what medium you're using, with a pencil, pen, or charcoal, you can try. So I'm just going to start with a wave. This is light pressure, and then when I press darker, the line gets darker. So try starting with a light pressure and then try getting darker. So I'm just going to do some waves. And then the scribbles, literally this. Actual scribbling for your assignment. And this is kind of fun. So I'm combining sort of 2 things together, but scribbly lines can also be something like that, or the waves can get, you know, more scribbly. And you can see how where the waves are just lines with different pressure, it's giving a different sort of textured area, a different shading, a different value than where I'm scribbling, because the scribbles are really close together here in the corners, and then I can start going over it. And, you know, this could obviously be hair, all kinds of things could be textured this way. And depending on what medium you're using, you know, with pencil, this is going to look really different, this kind of shading. I'm just going to add some more waves in so we have sort of different pressures and different values. Okay, that's number 3. And number 4, we're going to do form lines or contour lines. So think about a contour map where the lines are showing the heights and the shapes of what's on the map, you know, like a topographical map. So on the top here, I'm gonna do continuous lines and I think there's another U in there. Oh, I'm sorry. And on the bottom, I'm gonna do short lines. Okay, so the continuous line, and this is different than the wave because I'm thinking about like if there was a bump here or it was a bit raised. So the contour lines are all following the same form. And maybe I'll make it a little steeper or a bigger bump here. And then the second half, I'm gonna do short lines. So like this. So we can see, here, let me just get this. So with these short lines, you can create a different look of the contour. And you kind of have a different kind of control with these short lines, I think. And think about making them closer together or further apart to show value, shading. So I'm gonna make some a little closer to help with the shading. And you don't have to, since they're not one continuous line, like I can just do a couple here to make that maybe look like it's in shadow. If there's like a divot here, or, you know, I'm thinking of a contour map. So if it's like, this would be the valley in the map, right? But you could use this around any shape. You could use this on a figure, on anything really. Okay, so we're just practicing those different kind of lines. Number 5 is going to be circles and scallops. So circles, try all different size circles, and you can see where they're overlapping, you're starting to get more shading. So you can even do smaller circles if you have some spaces. So try all different sizes. You can get bigger, and then you can get really small to have more shading. Now this could obviously be like scales, or it could be a patio and a landscape. It could be rocks. It could be all kinds of things. And scallops are really just, you know, kind of unfinished circles. That's what I would call a scalloped edge of something. So you can combine these two together to make some interesting textures for all kinds of things. And I think these small circles, you know, they start to end up looking like scribbles a little bit, but maybe more uniform, maybe a little cleaner than the scribbles. And so just try different sizes of both circles and scallops. You can combine them together, see what that looks like, and really experiment. You can even fill some of the circles in, and then those become kind of more like dots. So I want you to fill these whole boxes. And just experiment with it and have fun, and start to imagine what these textures could apply to in your drawings. So number 6, the last one, is going to be your choice, and you're going to combine two of the ones up here. It's your choice. So I'm gonna do the ticks and the stippling, the dots. And I'm just gonna make, and if you make a lot, if you do ticks that are longer or longer lines, and then and then cross them, that becomes cross hatching, right? So this is just a way to maybe start out your cross hatching, or if you don't love cross hatching and you want to try another way to make shading and texture, this is a way to make clear marks and make intentional textures. I think a lot of times with the drawings, I see students do a lot of smudging and a lot of just filling in the shading areas, and that's great, but I also want you to think about every mark that you're making, every line, every dot, why it's there, and putting it into your drawing intentionally. So you're thinking about what the textures you're trying to render are, what you're trying to represent in your drawing as texture, what the material is, what it looks like, and how you can represent that with different lines and marks on your paper. So you're just, on this last one, you're choosing two of the different textures that we've learned from above, and you're just seeing how they look together, because in a drawing, you're definitely going to be combining lots of different textures. You might make up your own. This is just, some typical ones that artists will often use, but you can, of course, try other textures if you want. This is a good thing to keep in your sketchbook, or I have a lot of reference, kind of drawings and painting stuff like this that I practice, and I keep it in a folder or a pile in my studio just to have something to go off of. Sometimes looking at a blank page is really intimidating. So if you have these little libraries that you're building up of ideas and textures, it can be really fun. It's also kind of a thing to get you out of your head, and you're not trying to make it look like anything specific, you're just practicing. So these are your texture library. All right, have fun with it.